The President of the United States was asked whether he might declare a national emergency and take federal control of the November midterms, and his answer was 3 words: stranger things have happened. That is where we start today. Also on the board, the Department of Homeland Security is preparing to spend up to $20 million on gloves that deliver painful electric shocks to the people ICE officers touch. A federal judge has again blocked the White House from restricting mail-in ballots. Mike Lindell, the MyPillow founder with Donald Trump's personal endorsement, just lost a governor's primary to the Speaker of the Minnesota House. And the New York Times reports that Air Force One was flown as a decoy while the president was secretly evacuated. 8 stories, everything that mattered today, biggest first. The last one is the strangest thing you will hear all week, so stay to the end. Start with the line that should stop you cold. Asked whether he could declare a national emergency if the Senate fails to pass the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, known as the Save America Act, President Donald Trump answered, quote, "Stranger things have happened." The Hill reports that came Tuesday in an interview with conservative commentator Wayne Root, who raised the idea directly. According to The Hill, Trump left the door open to declaring a national security emergency and federalizing control over the November midterms. He did not commit to it. He also did not rule it out. Understand exactly what is being floated. Federalizing a midterm election would mean Washington stepping into a process run at the state and local level. And the trigger described in that interview is not an attack or a breach. It is a bill stalling in the Senate. That is the part to sit with. Legislation fails, so emergency powers get discussed. Why this reaches your life. The rules you vote under in November, the identification you show whether your ballot gets counted, are now openly tied to one piece of stalled legislation. Watch the Senate calendar on the Save America Act, and watch whether anything moves from an interview answer to a signed document. Reported by The Hill, $20 million for gloves designed to hurt. The Department of Homeland Security published a notice on Wednesday, outlining plans to provide Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers with gloves that deliver painful electric shocks. The Hill reports the agency intends to spend up to $20 million on the devices, formally called a Generated Low Output Voltage Emitter. The acronym, and this is genuinely how it is written, spells GLOVE. Here is why this is different from what officers already carry. A stun device is a tool you draw, aim and fire, and every one of those steps is a decision someone can be asked about afterward. A glove is already on the hand. Pain compliance stops being an instrument an officer reaches for, and becomes a property of the grip itself during an arrest, during a struggle, during a moment when somebody simply will not let go. What stage is this at? It is a published notice and a spending ceiling, which means a plan and a budget, not gloves in the field tomorrow. Why it matters to you. This is public money buying a new category of force for the agency carrying out immigration enforcement. Watch for the contract award and for written rules on when these can be switched on. Reported by The Hill. A federal judge just told the White House no for the second time on mail-in voting. The Hill reports that on Tuesday a federal judge again blocked the United States Postal Service from enforcing an executive order on voting by mail. That order directed the Postal Service to supply mail-in ballots only to states that handed the federal government lists of eligible voters. Read that condition again, because it is the whole fight. Under the order, a state's voters could lose access to mail ballots through the mail system not because of anything those voters did, but because their state declined to turn over a voter list to Washington. The Hill notes that back in June, United States District Judge Indira Talwani had already ruled that Donald Trump's order did not apply as the administration claimed. Tuesday's decision reinforces that block. Fox News, covering the same ruling, framed it as a judge blocking the administration from restricting mail-in ballots ahead of the midterms. What it means for you is simple and concrete. If you vote by mail, the method you have been using is protected for now by a court order, not by settled agreement. Expect an appeal, and expect this to still be live in November. Reported by The Hill. A presidential endorsement was supposed to be decisive. It was not. Minnesota House Speaker Lisa Demuth beat MyPillow founder and Trump loyalist Mike Lindell to win the state's Republican primary for governor, according to a race call by the Associated Press reported by NPR. Demuth, 59, has presided over a state house almost evenly split between Republicans and Democrats, and she campaigned on her ability to work across the aisle. Lindell received President Donald Trump's endorsement last month. He also, NPR notes, actively backed Trump's false election denial claims about the 2020 election as he tried to help the president overturn the vote. Some Republican leaders in the state had questioned Lindell's electability and challenged his residency and his business record. Others worried his ties to Trump would cost them in November, and the arithmetic backs them. Trump lost Minnesota in each of his 3 runs for president. Demuth held a sizable fundraising advantage and pointed to going toe-to-toe with Governor Tim Walz in budget negotiations. She says much of her campaign will focus on fraud in state government programs. The stakes: Republicans have not won a Minnesota governor's race in more than 2 decades. She now faces Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar in the fall. Reported by NPR. The Democratic establishment lost another one, and this time it lost to the sitting lieutenant governor. Fox News reports that Minnesota Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, Governor Tim Walz's second-in-command, eked out a victory over Representative Angie Craig in the Democratic Senate primary, toppling an establishment-backed member of Congress. NPR called the same result a win for progressive Peggy Flanagan in Minnesota's Democratic Senate primary. Flanagan won backing from Bernie Sanders and Representative Ilhan Omar, and Fox reports that at a campaign rally she expressed support for, in her words, ripping ICE apart. Fox framed the outcome as another blow to Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, part of what it described as a progressive insurgency scoring wins in key Senate battles. Put this next to the rest of tonight's board, and the pattern is hard to miss. Establishment-backed candidates with money, endorsements, and incumbency kept losing to challengers running against the party's own leadership. Why it matters beyond Minnesota. Senate primaries decide which version of a party shows up in November, and a nominee campaigning on dismantling an immigration enforcement agency changes what that entire race is about. Watch how national Democrats handle a nominee they did not pick, and whether Schumer's team spends here. Reported by Fox News. One of the best-known Democrats in the country is going home to run a state. Fox News reports that Senator Amy Klobuchar has won the Democratic nomination for governor of Minnesota, defeating long-shot challengers in the Democratic Farmer-Labor Party primary. NPR reports she won decisively. She is bidding to replace outgoing Governor Tim Walz, who, as NPR notes, opted not to run for a 3rd term and has said he will focus on tackling fraud in state programs in the time he has left in office. Fox reports Walz dropped his re-election bid in the middle of a massive fraud scandal. That scandal is now the center of gravity in this race. Fox reports Klobuchar outlined a plan on Sunday to overhaul Minnesota government and crack down on fraud, promising a top-to-bottom audit, while Republicans criticized her by tying her to Walz's record. Her Republican opponent, Lisa Demuth, says much of her own campaign will focus on fraud in state programs too. So Minnesota gets a general election where both nominees are running on cleaning up the same government. For taxpayers there, that is the whole question: whose money went where and who signed off? Polls close in November. Reported by Fox News with additional reporting from NPR. 14 terms in Congress ended on a Tuesday night in Connecticut. Fox News reports that Representative John Larson, a Democrat who had served 14 terms, met his match in Hartford Mayor Luke Bronin. Larson faced 3 challengers, and Fox reports they were running on generational change. That is the phrase to hold on to, because it describes a fight that had almost nothing to do with Republicans. Larson was a high-profile Trump critic. Fox notes he clashed with Donald Trump and Elon Musk over Doge, and he recently got into a heated exchange with a Fox News reporter over whether Democratic Socialists of America-affiliated candidates who won New York City primaries could create headaches for House Democrats and for a possible Speaker Hakeem Jeffries. He was, in other words, defending the party's existing leadership structure right up until his own voters retired him. What it means: seniority in Congress is a currency. 14 terms buys committee position and influence over what gets funded, and a district that trades that for a first-term member is making a deliberate bet on change over clout. Watch whether more long-serving House Democrats draw primary challenges from mayors and local officials after this. Reported by Fox News. And now the strangest story of the day, and the one with the fewest confirmed details. The New York Times reports that with President Donald Trump secretly evacuated, an imperiled Air Force One became a flying decoy. Read that again slowly. The aircraft kept flying, and the man it exists to protect was no longer the reason it was in the air. Fox News framed the same episode as a plane switch that raised eyebrows over the safety of the passengers left behind on board and tied the maneuver to evading a threat from Iran. Commentator Victor Davis Hanson argued on air that Trump is a special case when it comes to presidential security needs. Be precise about what is established and what is not. The reporting says a decoy maneuver happened. What is not spelled out in what has been published is exactly who remained aboard the aircraft used as the decoy and whether those people were told. That is the question worth following because Air Force One is not a private jet. It carries staff, crew, and press, and if a security protocol treats the airframe as bait, everyone inside inherits the risk. Reported by the New York Times, with additional coverage from Fox News. That was the whole day in one place. An emergency floated over the midterms. $20 million of shock gloves, a mail-ballot order blocked again. Lindell beaten, Larson retired by his own voters, and Air Force One flying as bait. A fresh collection drops tomorrow, same time, so you never have to chase 8 tabs again. One question for you. Which of those 8 should be the biggest story a year from now? Tell me below. If this saved you an hour, hit like and subscribe.